Good morning and welcome to another week of Journey with Christ. My name is Mark Mitchell. I'm the host here and the preaching minister at the Park Avenue Church of Christ here in Charleston, West Virginia. We are so glad you have joined us this week, and as usual, I'm joined by Steve Fox, the preacher for over 50 years in the Kanawha Valley. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing okay, Mark. You doing okay? My voice is kind of shot, but I'm doing all right.
Well, when the Browns beat the Cowboys, there's a tendency to lose your voice.
And I wasn't screaming that much.
It was just
That's why I tell
enough.
Susie all the time, they can't hear you. But I was screaming a little bit when I had a dream that the Browns beat the Cowboys. Is that true?
He did.
And wow, okay. Don't get no better than that.
No, it doesn't. And it was it was at Dallas on the road.
And speaking of sports, one of the things that Mark and I decided on when we decided on this topic, we're going to talk about what the New Testament, and including Jesus, what the New Testament taught about money. And a lot of us are thinking a whole lot about money right now.
Oh.
With the economy the way it is, up and down, and who knows what to do to get it back to where it was, and how does that economy affect everything else? When do our kids go back to school? When are churches open? When can you go grocery shopping? You don't have to walk down an aisle. It's got an arrow down there. It shows you which way to go.
Yeah, I noticed at Walmart, I was there earlier, and it looks like they took the arrows off because it was sort of like everybody was doing whatever they wanted anyway.
Well, I was in the grocery store one day, and I looked down, and I didn't know what those arrows were for. I was going the wrong way, and Susan said, she said, this is one way. And,
well, that's all I'm going.
no, well, yeah.
My way.
Susie said, this is one way, and I said, I was only going one way, and she said, didn't you see the arrows? And I said, I didn't even see the Indians. So we walked the right way and got back to our car safely. But, all this stuff about money has just messed up our society really good.
You're in a predicament as far as society. We have, I don't know how many news channels, but I'm going to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 20.
Yep.
But we have probably 10 money channels that do nothing but talk about people's money, where to invest it, where to put it, how to save it. And we are consumed because both those, even the news agencies, talk about money all the time.
And those stations have been on a long time, so people are watching.
Yeah, advertisers are not putting their money there for no reason. Yeah.
It's not like sitting there watching Weather Channel all day.
Yeah.
I don't know too many people that do that, but...
Well, there are a few.
Mm-hmm.
But,
well, anytime I think about money, I think of something that happened to me several years ago. And this is one of those situations where you could lay down in bed and stay in bed for 2 weeks and not be able to think of. Because when I tell you this, you're going to say, you're making that up. I'm not making it up. It happened. I swear on this clipboard that I got in 1966. I was holding a gospel meeting early 70s, maybe 72, 73, at a really small church. They had like 15 on Sunday morning. Hadn't had any more than that for the past 50 years. And they had invited me to come and hold a meeting on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I did that. One of the men handed me an envelope on the way out and said, thank you for coming. So I went out in the car, and just out of curiosity, I opened up the envelope. And there was a check in there written to me for $400.
whoa!
And so I felt really bad about that, and I got back out of the car, and I went back in, and I found him. And I said, you know what, I get paid whether I'm at my home congregation or not. So I know that, you don't have too many people here. I said, I really don't need this $400. And he said, no, we want you to have it. And I said, And he said, no, we want you to have it. And he said, we got $42,000 in the bank. And I went, and you only gave me $400? No, that's what went through my mind. But when he said that, I thought, what is the attitude of this congregation about money? $42,000 in your bank account, and you're paying for the janitor and somebody to mow the grass, and that's about what you got. And I thought, wonder what people, I wasn't trying to be judgmental, but I was in my mind saying, what do these people think about money? I guess when Jesus came back, they were going to hand it to him. I don't know what they were going to.
That's what they're. And I get, there are certain topics, and of course we broke the rule last week. You're not supposed to talk about, well, we break the rule every week because we talk about religion.
And politics.
And then we ended up going on politics. And the third of those trifectas is money. You don't talk about money with people other than if you got to, hey, I know where to invest your money. You're obligated by friendship to tell someone you got a stock tip. But
my son-in-law is a broker, and I ask him all the time. He's never given me an answer. I said, why do they call you a broker? You don't want to be a broker. You don't. In 6 months, you don't want to say, "Hey, you're broke, man." Yeah. I don't know why they call him a broker, but he's very good at it. And like you said, he watches a lot of those commercials and advertisements and programs that just discuss money.
Yeah, and the hard part is, I get both dilemmas. There is a responsibility and an accounting that God requires. How did you manage what was given to you? Basically, God told Adam and Eve, be fruitful, multiply, and manage. Take care of this.
How are you going to use the gifts that you have?
Exactly. But I also know at the same time there are, we're going to get to here shortly.
One of my favorite movies, and I know yours too, we've talked about this, is George Bailey and It's a Wonderful Life. And he's sitting in a bar with his angel, with Clarence Oddbody. So they both ordered a drink, and George Bailey looks at Clarence and says, "Do you have any money?" He said, "No, we don't have any money. We don't use money in heaven." And Jimmy Stewart says, "Hey, it's pretty handy down here."
Yeah, it comes in handy down here.
Yeah, it comes in handy down here. And, you start thinking about, could I live a day without money? Could I live a week? Probably not. Without money? I certainly couldn't live a month or a year without money. So if I am gifted in that area and God has given me that, how am I going to use it?
But you do know we're only descended from maybe 3 generations to where money didn't have the stranglehold on this country as it does today.
Yeah.
My grandparents bartered on so much of the stuff that they did. And now my grandfather still yet had a job, but he didn't make all that much. It was very little, but money didn't do what it does today. Today money is a pathway to a fulfilled dream, to a fulfilled desire, to some moment. What is it? The expression today is.
While you're thinking about that word, what you said about your grandparents, I think and I haven't done the research on this, but I bet 100 years ago, there weren't as many millionaires and billionaires as there are now.
No.
Our society has kind of worked on that, and the money part it does different things to different people.
Mm-hmm.
Susie and I have made 20 trips to Managua, Nicaragua to work with 4 different children's clinics. And before we go on those trips, I have people from the church and maybe some of my other friends that know what Susie and I do down there, and they give us money to take down there. And sometimes I've got on a plane at Yeager Airport with over $5,000 in my pocket. I don't like that. I don't like that feeling, because all I'm thinking about is, am I going to get down there with this money? And after I do get down there, I'm spending the whole trip going, passport, wallet, passport, wallet. Do I have my passport and my wallet? And, I'm glad when the trip is over and I don't have any money left. So now we can go home and not worry about it. But it affects people in so many different ways.
Oh, well, again, it just moves us to think and do things that I don't normally think. I mean, how many articles do you read about in the news, or you hear about in the news now, where people have stolen this, stolen that in order to do this or to get that? And I get it. I mean, I really, really do. Of all people, I do.
For the love of money.
For the love of money. Well, or what the money does.
Oh, yeah.
What I was going to say a while ago, it's like a bucket list moment, Money fulfills dreams that you've got. And the truth is, what's behind those dreams is what they really need to be dealing with.
Before we look at some scriptures, I think I can summarize what we said with one very quick story. A man went into a bank one day and said to the clerk behind the counter, he said, "Is Tonto here?" And he said, "No, but you can see the loan arranger."
Okay, if you will turn your Bibles to Luke 12, we're going to be beginning reading in verse 13 through 15. Luke 12, 13 through 15. And this is entitled, The Parable of the Rich Fool. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." There's no doubt that one of the greatest functions now today of a lawyer or a judge or an arbiter is to decide where the money goes.
That's right. And then take their commission out of it.
That's right. It is a wonder to what extent the pursuit and the love of money impacts every facet of our lives. I mean, to me, it would almost be the heart. One of the expressions Jesus, giving your heart to God. Most people's heart is owned by the pursuit of money. It is their idol. That is their what they think about constantly. I mean,
and if people know that and they get addicted to it, it's just like being on drugs or alcohol. I mean, it can be highly addictive, and you start living your life for the love of the money that you're going to make.
Oh, I know. And what it does, there are people who do nothing but buy clothes and have a closet full of clothes and all the things that go with it. I mean, all of this stuff, some would say, "Oh, I'm not chasing after money." I loved your question yesterday in the sermon. What are you thinking about the most? Or it was Tim talked about it in the announcements. What are you thinking about the most? Whatever you're thinking about the most is what you're interested in the most. And I generally find that, and I'm not talking conversations, I'm talking about what you're thinking about.
Well, when Susie takes care of all the monetary deals in our family, which has kept us married for 51 years. So Susie takes care of all the money. She worked at Bank One for 8 years, so she knows what she's doing. And every once in a while, I'll say to her, honey, can I have $20? And she'll say, what'd you do with the $20 I gave you last week? So, I have to wiggle around a little bit before, no, she always takes care of me and makes sure I have money. But it can control your life. It can grab a hold of you. People that are like mafia people who kill other people, they're not doing that for their satisfaction. They're not doing that for entertainment. They're doing that because somebody offered them thousands of dollars to wipe out somebody.
Or they had the money that they wanted and they thought, well, I'll just take it from them.
Or selling drugs.
Yep.
There's so many things in our society that are based on the money being transferred from one place to the other.
And I wonder how often in this parable, the parable of the rich fool, how many times does our prayer request to God seem like Lord, would you fix this for me? I want this twice, this job increase because I want the extra money. I want, will you get my family members to share this something that they've got with me,
Oh, I've seen families argue right before or after the funeral.
Yeah, well, and even how many times do we know of ministers who are on TV, who sell people on the concept of, gleaning, and they have them send money so that they can say, well, God will bless you. And it works. People send the money.
My favorite programs to watch are those televangelists who talk so loud and so fast that you can't understand anything they say until they get to the end of the program and say, if you would like to send us your money, it's Post Office Box. That's B-O-X Box. Charleston, C-H-A, Charleston, West Virginia.
Yeah,
you can understand them then.
All of a sudden, it's you can understand it. Yeah, and
well, this is the phrase that we wanted to kind of highlight. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Our society is so far away from that, so far away. One of the most difficult things a parent has to do is teach their child that concept. Your life does not consist of what you have, of junk that you have, of things that you have.
And yet, as a parent, how do you tell your child no when your credit card debt is over the top? It's about to strangle you. Every time you get a paycheck, it's all going towards paying the debt.
Don't you love those commercials that say, are you over $50,000 in debt because of your taxes? Send us your name and your forms. And then the person comes on and says, oh, I didn't think it would work, but it worked. I owed $52,000 and I had to pay $8,000. I'm going, how in the world are people doing this? And advertising it and saying, well, I don't know.
Well,
maybe my broker son-in-law can explain that to me.
Yes, maybe he can. The pursuit of having, we're inundated with it. And in fact, we have become so consumption oriented that I don't know if we can think, for us to think any other way would almost be hard. In fact, today, see in the next week how many conversations turn to getting something. The holidays is coming up. There's going to be talking about the gifts you're going to be purchasing.
We're going to do that again?
Yeah,
oh,
sorry.
Gee.
Of course, maybe we'll call off Christmas this year.
Because of the virus?
Because of the virus,
Yeah.
Send a note to all your relatives. Hey, we're calling off Christmas this year. Maybe it might not be a bad idea anyway.
Where's the petition? I'll sign that.
Yeah, I'm all for that. But if you pay attention, all the conversations, so many of the conversations that we have are about buying something, whether it's a car, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So
That one phrase that Jesus said, "A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." I think most of us grow up with the idea that verse isn't right. We may not even know that verse is in the Bible, but most of us grow up thinking, the more stuff I got, the better my life is. The more stuff I got, the happier I am. And you know, one of the things that I think is telling about our environment and our society, and if our audience does this, please forgive me. I'm just venting my own opinion. You drive down the road and here's about 100 storage bins in a row that have been built, and there's 5 or 6 rows or 8 or 9 rows, and I'm thinking, what does that say about our society? What that says is, my house is filled with stuff,
but I had to go get another
but I had
place.
to go get another place to hide the rest of my stuff.
Yep. Yep.
And maybe, like you said a little while ago, you might have 50 pairs of shoes or 100 pairs of pants or 50 dresses, and you look at that and say, there are people in the world that don't have anything.
Nope.
And that's why he was called a fool. Because all he thought about was what I'm going to do.
But what is mine, and it's not yours,
Yes.
and I can't give anything I have away because I may need it.
And think how happy he would have been if he'd have shared his barns and his goods and his grain.
You know,
It would have done
That-
him a whole lot of good.
that's the most amazing part of this entire. I have never seen anybody who gave something of themselves, who didn't walk away thinking to themselves, I'm better off than the person I gave to.
If
Because-
you give it, you'll get it back.
It's more than get it back. It's just the fact that God created us in order to share what we have so that it does something to the inside of us. I mean, it impacts us. It gives us, I guess, gives us the feelings and the understanding of what God has constantly been doing for us. I mean, it always bothered me when people turned, like when they gave their contributions, like God needed that money from them. And I said, God doesn't need your money. He can make all of it he wants. That's not the point of our giving. Our giving is storing up so that we can use it to disperse to those who come to the building, to the church, to Nicaragua, wherever we may be sending the money to help others. Our pursuits is always in an effort to be like God in how He gives.
Do you know why? Do you know why we're blessed? Do you know why we, I said a little while ago, you give it away and you get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why that's true? Because God's got a bigger shovel.
Yes.
And He has promised that if we give our stuff away when other people need it, we'll be blessed even more. I know there are a lot of people. When I was preaching at Canal City, we had a gentleman up there he was probably about 80. He was a multimillionaire. He sent money to a college in Parkersburg when they built a new girls' dorm. My daughter stayed in that dorm for a couple years. But he got in early on the ground with all the cable TV up and down the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And after he owned a bunch of those, he sold them. And he became a multimillionaire. And he was always generous about giving his money. I hear people say all the time, well, rich people can, they can do good things. They don't have to say, yeah, if you know what you got and you know how you're doing it, and God has promised you a blessing, you can give your money away or pay for other things that aren't necessarily going to get paid. But he was, my secretary and I were sitting in the office, and we looked out the window, and there was Bob mowing the grass. And after he got done mowing the grass, he was weed whacking over there. And we saw a car stop out there. And the car went on. And so I went out and I said, "You okay?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "That guy just offered me an extra $15 if I'd come up to his house and mow his grass." And this guy could have bought and sold Lower Donnelly, the whole thing. And this guy wanted to know if he needed $15 extra if he'd come up and mow his grass. So you can't. There's a lot of people, and I love these stories. There are a lot of people where you couldn't tell by their actions or by how they acted at a party, or you couldn't tell if this man had $10,000 in the bank or $50 million in the bank.
No, and one of the maybe worst signs of our society is that we're so interested in seeing what other people have. That's all we do. I mean, reality shows now have taken on a whole new scheme, in the fact that now people just want to see what rich people do in their house and so forth. So
Yeah.
We've got another verse.
What's the next one, Mark?
Luke 8. Oh, Luke 9. Thank you.
Well, my sheet says that's a 9.
Yeah, well, there's a going discussion on my ability to read hen scratching.
Yes.
And I'm
I'm not very good at that.
Verse 51. As the time...
57.
Oh, 57.
You want me to take this verse?
I'm there now.
Okay, take it.
Luke 9, 57 through 58. As they were walking along the road, a man said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens, and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." He said to another man, "Follow me." The most difficult thing for us to grasp is actually, in God's economy, what has value and what doesn't have value. And without a doubt, I generally put value into things that God doesn't, and don't value the things that God does.
It's a challenge.
Oh. And Jesus, he didn't say use this example of foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, as if to say, Mr. Pride person, say, that wasn't the point. The point has always been, with Jesus, it didn't mean anything anyway. He went off into the desert for 40 days because the Spirit told him to, and then starved himself because the Spirit told him to. That form of obedience and form of he was completely emptied of himself. The hardest part, when Jesus does the Sermon on the Mount, and he begins with, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." No truer words can ever be spoken, and in fact it almost ought to be tattooed, maybe on our forehead, but definitely in our brain. Are you seeking the attributes of what wealth does for you, or are you seeking the parts of poverty that allows you to have something you can't see?
Well, if you're done with that thought,
I am.
that leads us into a very, very good segue where we can look at the life of Jesus and see how he accepted poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And the verse that you just read said he didn't have any place to lay his head. I don't think that means he never slept inside.
No.
I think that means in general, he didn't have a place to live. He didn't have a place that he could go to a certain address every night. And I'm sure there were people that invited him into their homes and they stayed all night with them. But as a general rule, he didn't have any place. He didn't have a pillow and a blanket to lay down on. And if you start listing the things that explain to us Jesus' poverty, I wrote a few of them, expresses to us that Jesus obviously was not a wealthy man. He didn't have a place to lay his head. Foxes have holes, birds have nests, but he didn't have any place to lay his head. Jesus' poverty is mentioned all the way through the Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
Can't pay your taxes? Jesus said, go to the lake and pull out this fish, and you open up the fish's mouth and there'll be a coin in it. I've tried to do that, it doesn't work now. But that was how he paid his taxes. No place to lay his head. He asked the Samaritan woman for a drink of water. His parents were poor, and we know that because of in Luke chapter 2, when they went to the temple to offer the sacrifice, the poorest people offered a dove,
Yep.
or a turtle dove or a pigeon, something like that. And that's what Mary and Joseph offered. So they were not rich, wealthy people. One of the things that I read, and I'm sorry I can't give the man or woman credit who wrote this, but I think it's really cool to think about. He said he was talking about the manger and the inn and the stable where they were when Jesus was born. And he said, did you ever notice there were more animals at the birth of Jesus than there was people?
Mm.
That's a whole different discussion.
Wow.
He rode a borrowed donkey to ride into Jerusalem. He never owned a fishing boat. He was around people that fished all the time, and he never owned a fishing boat. So there were some women who continually helped him with money in his ministry. They're referred to several times. He was buried in a borrowed tomb.
Yep.
Of course, he didn't need it very long.
No.
He didn't need it very long, but he was buried.
Couple nights stay.
Yeah. So if you add all that up, and some others that maybe I missed, if you add all that up, what you see is a person who said, I'm going to empty myself. I'm going to empty myself and be a humble servant and be a model for those people who are my disciples who want to follow me.
And it's, again, goes back to this thing that I think that I struggle with. Intellectually, I get it. I understand it. But performing it deep in my heart is hard, because I know that Jesus was demonstrating exactly what was important to God and what was God's intent of his creation. For them to live in such harmony, much like what happens in the beginning parts of the early church, is that they just sold things, and whoever needed it was there. There was no more storing up barns or building barns.
Now don't get me wrong, and please don't get upset with me. I mean, the audience is looking at this. They understood what real communism was.
Yeah.
Common. Everything, people had everything in common. They didn't have the wealthy and the poor. They tried to make it as fair as they could, and that's what real common goals are.
Yeah, it's a place where you walk through the door, as you said, you don't know who the rich person is, and you don't know who the poor person is either.
Yep.
You come into an area where there is no pretense, but you come into a place where you are loved for the sheer fact of who you are. And the person, as James puts it, who's been overly blessed, should feel humbled that God would entrust them to give to that extent. I mean,
and in that same example, that's how we determine about people, because that guy's got old, dirty clothes on.
Yeah.
So we're going to stay away from him. That guy's dressed like a king. we want to be in his presence and listen to what he says.
He must have something important
Yeah.
to say.
And that's not the way you value people at
No.
all. Matter of fact, since we're talking about that, the value of a man is how he treats someone who can do him absolutely no good.
I know.
Boy, I wish I'd have written that.
Well, you know
Of
what?
course, if I'd have written that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
Probably not, no.
I'd be somewhere writing a bunch of books
Um,
and making a whole lot of money and never speak to you again.
in the book of Philippians, there's one of the guys there whose name is mentioned, who's an elder, who at the same time is a slave. And I always thought that goes against everything that a lot of churches today, because I'm frustrated sometimes when the guy who's put in charge of everything happens to be the most successful human being in the building, as opposed to being the most spiritual and wise person in the building, you know? And it's not, I'm not throwing stones at anybody, but I've seen human nature be human nature, where the guy that owned 3 businesses, he was put in charge of things like the church is a business, and it's not. It's the furthest thing to do with money, as Jesus taught us.
Well, do we have time to... We're probably about out of time, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, I wanted to say a couple other things before we were out of time.
close.
My son-in-law, again, Jason, graduated from Concord University, Southern West Virginia. And Susie and I went to his graduation. And the guy who was speaking at Jason's graduation told this story. He said he had a sociology class, and on the final in the sociology class, the last question was, what's the name of the janitor in this building?
Wow.
And 3 or 4 people, said, could you come here? Or they raised their hand and said, is this a trick question? And he said, no. He said, because if you don't know who the janitor is in this building, I've done a lousy job of teaching you sociology.
Man, that's powerful.
Isn't that powerful? Yeah.
That's why he was a professor. Because, if we all desperately need to get to the point of where our view of money is not here. It needs to be God and
That's
people.
not the value of a person.
That's not the value of the person.
No.
That's not the value in God's economy either. It's important that we can, get down this path. Now, I know for our listeners that we rambled a little bit. Big surprise there, right?
There's water in the Pacific Ocean. Did you
Yes.
know that? We rambled a little bit.
But we want to continue our discussion on money. If you have any questions or any comments you'd like to make, please send them to me, and we will discuss them. I promise.
Lorraine's left.
And we still forgot about Lorraine. All right, I'll tell you what. Answer Lorraine's question. Do you remember what it was?
Lorraine's question was, do we hear any more about Nineveh, which was the capital of Babylon? Do we hear any more about Nineveh after they were saved by Jonah's message? And the answer is no. There we took care of Lorraine's question.
Yeah.
I don't think after that Nineveh is mentioned
Yeah.
at all.
I don't think so either. And we don't really, other than Jesus' reference to Jonah, don't hear any more about Jonah either. So, except I think there's one reference in Hebrews.
There's a couple references afterwards in the Old Testament where it talks about if Jonah and David, and I can't remember who the third one was, maybe Abraham. If Jonah and David and Abraham were in the city, that still wouldn't save them.
Yeah.
What he was talking about was these people were so powerful that the average person wouldn't listen to them, so they probably wouldn't listen to them now. And Jonah is in a list of those 3. I don't know where that is, and I apologize to...
Yeah, well. But there you go. If there are any other things that you would like to discuss, and we would love to hear if there's a specific topic you would like for Steve to take on.
Like when they ask a question about Jonah, I can tell them honestly, you can't keep a good man down.
Yeah. At least the fish couldn't.
There's Lorraine's question right there.
Oh, we've lost today. So this is the problem doing this on Monday.
And the stupid thing about Jonah's story is people always argue with other people. Well, it doesn't say whale, it says big fish. It says big fish in Jonah, in the Minor Prophet. It says whale in Matthew chapter 12, where Jesus is talking about it, and he says, and that's another place where Jonah's talked about just a very quick hit. But, excuse me, it's not, when you argue about is it a whale or a big fish, you miss the whole point. Because I don't think Jonah was inside there going, is this a whale or is this a big fish?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't heard the argument in a while, so
well, maybe we're doing better.
I haven't heard anybody argue about it for a long time. So
It's just a whale of a story, I know that.
yeah. So, well, on behalf of Steve and I, we wish you a blessed week, and we ask you to continue to stay upbeat and stay positive. We know the circumstances by which we're all living in makes it difficult, and it's not like there's any good news being portrayed anywhere. If you listen to the TV, the world is destroyed, and maybe in some ways there's a problem, I know, but God is still God, and Jesus is still King and sitting on the throne of God. And what will make everything in our lives better is turning ourselves toward Christ and accepting Him as our Savior and moving toward the ideas and the relationship of the kingdom of God. God bless and have a great week. Thank you.